This episode of the Good and the Bad and the Geeky podcast is brought to you by Audible.com.
Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/goodbadgeeky.
Audible.com. Over 85,000 titles to choose from for your iPod or MP3 player.
Warning! The podcast you're about to hear is very filthy. We say naughty words you would use as an adult anyway. It'll cause you not to eat your vegetables, and your mom generally thinks it's a bad idea.
Any moment of the show that has any similarity to the history of any person living or dead, real or fictional, to real events are entirely unintentional and coincidental. Unless we're specifically noted otherwise in the cast and crew credits, all celebrity voices are impersonated, and no celebrity has endorsed any aspect of this show.
From the D4K studios in Columbus, Ohio, it's the Good, the Bad, and the Geeky.
Hey everyone, and welcome out to episode 167 of the Good, the Bad, and the Geeky, originally released the week of April 10th, 2012. I'm Nick Nitro, and along with me, as always,
John Bettine.
And we're missing our third member. We don't know where he is, but, you know, anyway. DJ Meat is here with us in spirit, which isn't really him saying much at all anyway, so I guess it all works out.
Yeah.
So we have a few things to get out of the way before we get to the meat of this week's episode, which is really cool. First off, we want to just say a big heads up and thank you to TalkSuperstation.com, who syndicates the show. And also big thanks for the past few weeks. We've had some really cool guests, like one of the guests that's on this week's episode. We just want to thank everybody, and we didn't really get a chance to plug it the last few episodes too, but if you wanted to say something about some of the guests we've had, whether it be Kevin Beagle or Barbara Bennett, or Barbara Barnett, or like tonight's Ryan Johnson episode, please email us at goodbadgeeky@gmail.com or 614-364-4088. And the reason why this is very particularly important is because, John, do you know what next week's episode is? What would be? It would be Mailbag Day.
Is it really?
It would be Mailbag Day, yes. Next Tuesday, April 17th, Mailbag Day.
I love Mailbag Day.
Everybody loves Mailbag Day. It's like one of the best days of the year, or the month. If you think about it, how many days a year are Mailbag Day? It would just be, if it could be every day, though, it would be even better.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, so, again, contact us, goodbadgeeky@gmail.com, 614-364-4088. We will read your emails, voicemails. We'll read your voicemails out on the show. That's very key. We won't play them, but we'll read them. Jesus.
I'm going to type them all out, and then I'll read them.
Yeah, I'll take the time to type out your voicemail, especially you, caller, with a 5-minute message.
We're going to hire a stenographer.
That's right. You know, we do have, the show does have an unofficial stenographer. Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Anytime by the way, John, this leads into an excellent segue.
Oh, jeez. I know you're going with it.
I know, right? If you would like to buy the GBG app, you can see our wonderful stenographer's work and some of our interviews. If there's a PDF file there, it's because of our stenographer, Michael Walzer, who takes the time, listens to our interviews, and types everything out. So, and you can get that on Android Marketplace or iTunes for $1.99. Isn't that a steal, John?
That is a steal.
It's a good deal, a wonderful good deal. Now,
but even though you're paying for it, it's not really stealing. So
that is true. You are buying it legally. You're obtaining it through amounts of fair use and as a good law-abiding citizen. But just if you tell yourself if you want to steal it, just imagine that you're not paying $1.99. Or you can do that thing on iTunes where you can automatically say, don't ask me again for my password when I buy something. And then when you click on it, it's like you are stealing it.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're stealing it.
Exactly. There you go. Steal our app. For $1.99. This episode in particular is very cool. We're going to get right to it now. We got some of that plugging stuff out of the way. Okay, so John, maybe you could help us with this. all the people we've had on the show thus far, they're in the TV or film industry, but on a roundabout average, in terms of we've had full interviews or conversations with, what would you say their role would be in the industry?
Pretty much, they've all created created a show. But so I guess what are they, producers now or
executive producers / showrunners?
Yeah.
So we've had Matt Nix, Bill Lawrence on the show, Kevin Beagle, who's the other co-creator of Cougar Town, and one of the cool things we've been able to do is we've had some actors on the show, which is again really neat, but. We've been doing conference calls, which is we'll get a conference call emails from studios, and they'll say, hey, we want you to send this phone call with every fucking other publication out there, like Entertainment Weekly and whatever, and you get like one question or 5 minutes with them. And so when you've heard Elijah Wood on the show, or Louis C.K., not C.K. Lewis, like I like to call him, and Joshua Gomez from Chuck, we've never really had an actor do a full show with us, what's really cool is we have Ryan Johnson, who's taking the time to do a full episode with us. He's from the USA Network show Fairly Legal, which airs Fridays on USA Network, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central, so please make sure you check out that show. It's really good, and I will say, if you follow my reviews on Examiner and thus gbgpodcast.com, I was not a fan of the first season, and the character Ryan Johnson plays is a brand new character just for season 2 onwards, to sort of retool it, and he actually makes the show, I think, whatever I thought the show was missing, he fills that void and makes it very entertaining. So, and the other cool thing is this was brought to you by the power of Twitter. Yeah, Twitter. We've had 2 people now through Twitter. We had Matt Nix and actually, we've had 3. Kevin has sort of agreed through Twitter a little bit too. But but this one came a little bit more out of the blue. With Kevin, we've had the Bill Lawrence connection. But so this was really cool. And I will give you a heads up, guys, because what we'll do is we're going to take a break and we'll come back with the interview. Is that and this is painfully embarrassing, but there was initially problems with Skype when I called him, and so I had to. So you'll hear a bit of a conversation about how I'll act like I've said this, because he gave a wonderful, I'm assuming, which is a wonderful, beautiful answer. It was a 5-minute answer to a question I asked. Yeah, and I felt so horrible, and it was like that's how it sounded. And at one point, I finally said, "I'm really sorry. I have to hang up and call you back with my cell phone because something's wrong." So, but we're going to leave the ugly of the beginning of the call and everything else that came after, which is practically awesome. The guy was really awesome. He's a very big techno geek, and we'll talk about that. And of course, Fairly Legal. So, right after the break, you'll hear from Ryan Johnson.
Hey.
Wake up, go to work. Work. Come home. Eat dinner. Rot your brain out. Go to bed. Lather. Rinse. Repeat. Are you tired of an old humdrum life? Tired of things that just weigh you down and depress you? Wouldn't you rather just focus on things that are awesome? Tune into Nutty Bites. Find out what's awesome. Nutty Bites. nimlast.org/blog.
Hey, you know what book I've not read in a while?
What?
Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. There's a few new ones I wouldn't mind having either.
I'm busy a lot of the time, too. Yeah, that's why I listen to audiobooks on my iPod Touch. It helps me stay in touch with the books I want to read and allow me to, fit in between the rest of my responsibilities. That is why, for some of you listening to the Good, the Bad, and the Geeky podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 14-day trial to give you a chance to check out their service.
I was able to sign up and get a free copy of one of my favorite books, Catch Me If You Can.
Hey, do they have Horton Hears a Who?
Let me check.
Yes, they do.
So if you'd like to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/goodbadgeeky.
What's that again for the free audiobook?
Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/goodbadgeeky for your free audiobook.
All right. Ryan, can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you much better.
Man, I am so sorry about that. I've never had that problem with Skype before when I've tried doing these interviews, so I do apologize about that.
Yeah, you sound like it's like you've gone from being like down the hallway and round the corner to like in the seat next to me.
Right. Okay. Cool. That's much better. Well, Matt was saying I sound like Darth Vader, which ultimately I guess appropriate for a geeky podcast, but at the same time not really good for the interview. So
yeah, right. Yeah. No problem.
So, and I do apologize. Could you? I initially asked because that whole initial answer you were giving was a little bit muddled.
Okay, you want me to start again?
Yeah, if you could. I do apologize. And the question was, how did you bring the character to life from what was on the page to what ended up being on the screen?
All right. Yeah, I will. Now, I'm going to do that thing where I say it all again and pretend I've just said it.
Yeah,
I've done this.
No, that's fine. Well, you know what? It's all part of the show. It's all gravy, man. So just do what you got to do.
So basically, where do I begin? Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with sort of where Kate's at and how my character plays into her life, and then what they were looking for, as far as character's concerned. But she's at a point in her life where she, her relationship with Justin is on the rocks. And they had been on the rocks throughout the series. And I think that had been a challenge for the writers because they set him up as the ex-husband. And so if the relationship's over, I guess there's that kind of candle thing that she's still burning for him, but it's harder to create conflict when it's over. And so there's he keeps popping up and looking dreamy and handsome, and she keeps wondering what went wrong. And but I think it was sort of like, all right, well, how do we progress from there? And so at the start of the next season, they put it that basically they're going to get divorced, and she's just kind of going to sign the papers. And as that's happening, this guy turns up in her life, and he meets her in a bar, and then they cross paths on a case, and he is this kind of fast-talking, crazy trial attorney. And there's something about him that drives her crazy, because he is so driven by the dollar, and he is a lawyer through and through, in that he doesn't see any grey area. He just goes for the win. And so if he's behind his client, or if he's working on something, he will find every and any angle to win the case, and stop at nothing to do so. Whereas she will, she'll be worried if the person doesn't find out what really happened. And his attitude's always like, well, we're going up against the corporation. We can't find the truth, but all we can do is go for the money. And then the person we're representing is going to feel like, at least, even though they got screwed over, they've got a couple of $1 million out of it, and we'll get a decent chunk of that, and we can start paying off the debt that all your kind of morality has brought to this company, because you're just hopeless at bringing in coin. And so that immediately creates conflict between these two.
Right.
And he's very used to going out and, buying martinis and flashing his black Amex around the bar, and women responding really well to that. And she just finds that completely horrible. But with that, they both have a kind of passion, and they both have this kind of enthusiasm for what they do, that I think that's the one thing they have in common. They have very different ways of getting there, but they both really have this enthusiasm for what they do. And they get up early and they go to bed late, and it's all about work. And so within all that clashing between the two of them, I think there's this kind of worthy adversarial thing going on. And they really... and they can't get away from each other. And so I think, things start to simmer deeply between the two of them. And then they start going in against the state, where Mr. Patrick, or Justin Patrick, also known as Michael Trucco, works. Mm-hmm. And that's where, the love triangle begins. And so it fuels her relationship with Justin as well, and it brings conflict to that. And it makes that kind of more multi-layered. and it sets up this kind of juicy triangle between the three. But for what they're looking for in the character, I think where a lot of guys were going wrong, where they were coming in and auditioning for it, was they were just fixated on the fact that this guy was a lawyer, and they just couldn't get past that. And so they were playing it quite serious and coming in dressed really sharp. And I think the more rigid that these actors became, the less interesting it was to fire opposite Sarah. And also, this guy needs to be the polar opposite to Justin, who is very by the book and very serious and kind of moral code. And so when I saw it, I read the script, and I just saw that this guy needs to be like a bull in a china shop. And so I just took a gamble in the audition, and I came in and I kind of read the lines at 1,000 miles an hour and threw the rhythm all over the place and picked things up and put them down and sat down and stood up and
it's paid off wonderfully. It's paid off wonderfully because, I mean, your character is, and yeah, I guess I never really thought of it like that. I mean, the character in you know, in terms of the show is a bull in a china shop because he is disrupting how Read and Read run, and I find that, but even you're right, even your rhythm does feel a little bit, feels a bit all over the place, but it works works wonderfully for the character because you never really know exactly where he's going to go, even though you do. It's a really interesting concept that he...
Right.
Like the whole thing where you're technically telling Leonardo that without... You're actually trying to not say it without saying it. You're trying to say that, hey, I am a partner at the firm, but you need to do all this paperwork for me just because you're not my... Yeah, and the whole thing where you're putting on that helmet and dancing around in the background, I mean, that cracked me up, man. Like... Because it's still completely not what I was expecting you to do, but it is. It's really bizarre. So,
yeah, it's right. And so, and you know, all the stuff with Mark Margolis's character, you know, out with the old, in with the new. You get this feeling at Read and Read that there's, and especially with Virginia's character Lauren, that there's this real sense of tradition, you know, and she would wear nice blazers and go to riding clubs and, you know, have lunches at places where you're supposed to wear a jacket and stuff like that. And Ben wouldn't have the slightest clue about that sort of thing. And so he also brings in this sense of, like, you know, a newer kind of generation and a kind of less traditional way of doing things. And so that creates a kind of fun friction between him and Lauren as well, because, you know, he just wants to bring in, he brings in some of his own weird and wonderful clients, and it's less about, oh, Read and Read has this reputation that we need to uphold, and it's more about just bringing in the coin, basically, and bringing in some money.
Right, and that's why they hired Ben in the first place, was to bring him on as a partner, is to sort of save Read and Read because they're in financial straits.
That's right.
And one of the things I found really fascinating is, which is, even though Sarah's character, Kate, doesn't agree with your methods, when she's trying to mediate between you and Virginia's character of Lauren about what's going on with the case, I think in a few weeks episode where you had there was conflict between which client would we take. Kate sided with your character of Ben because, if we're in dire straits of money, we should probably go with the side that's winning in this case, which would bring more money into the,
That's right. So it's a real kind of shift in the firm, because then also Lauren has to make that decision as well, and it really goes against everything she's stood for in the past, but she has to kind of accept that things need to change if they need to move forward, because Kate really spends a lot of time seeking out the truth, and she spends a lot of time worrying if whatever she's working on, the results work in favor of her client feeling like they've they've found out the truth and found out, you know, what really happened and all that sort of stuff. And Ben just doesn't care. That's his gift. He doesn't care. And that's what creates such great conflict and kind of tension between them, is that they often get stuck on these cases together. And she's busy figuring out, you know, if the corporation lied, and he's busy figuring out just how much we can get out of them.
Well, you're saying he doesn't care, but it brings up a more interesting question. Then why partner with Read and Read? Because the way that the first episode, Satisfaction, for season 2 begins is that you're already sort of a major partner in your own firm, or you're a high,
right.
Yeah. So why leave your own comfort zone and then go shake things up at Read and Read? Why do you think Ben would do that then? If he does, or is it just to get to Sarah's character Kate? But it makes it off that he doesn't really know they're in the same firm.
Yeah, well, I think he's gotten to a point on his own, pretending that it's, you know, Ben Grogan and Associates, where it's really just Ben Grogan. I think everyone gets to a point where they need to expand. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes down to a couple of things. One is he really needs to expand because there's only so much he can do with his iPhone and iPad and, you know, office space that he's working out of. And so he needs staff and he needs people to work with, and that's going to be a lot of overhead if you just think about it basically. Sure. But the other thing is he meets Kate Reid, and she's banging hot. Yes. And she's ridiculous, and she is part of this really kind of suave and sophisticated firm that has a huge client base. And so I think he sees two real opportunities there. One, even if he doesn't realize it straight away, but one is that he's going to fall hopelessly in love with this girl. And it's kind of a good opportunity to be around her more. I don't know if he knows that straight away, but that's definitely what draws him to her. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, it's a business decision, which is expanding his horizons and kind of, you know, even though he has his own ways and methods, there's things that Lauren has done with the firm and her ex-husband, Kate's dad, Teddy Reid, had created with the firm that if he buys into, he can really utilize and take advantage of and become a part of and bring his own kind of change too, but still, you know, grow as a businessman and a lawyer.
Well, this sounds like a question that I'm sure every actor who comes from the land down under gets. But even actors from the UK, how is it for you to, when you do the American accent? Do you prep up for in advance for it? Because I think Hugh Laurie, just when he does House, he speaks an American accent all the time. Because I think Stephen Fry came over to visit him and have lunch with him. He's like, "Oh, stop it, man! You don't have to talk like this. You're with your friend." And he's like, "No, I have to keep it up. If not, I." So do you go in and out of it like that, or?
Did you say Stephen Fry visited him?
Yeah, well, Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie are such good friends. They did a show.
Yeah, I know. They did a little bit of Fry and Laurie back in the day.
I know. Isn't that a great show? I love that show.
That was a really funny show. Well, it's interesting because I started, my managers would send me. It took me a while to get representation in the States, and my goal has been that I've really wanted to work on American TV, mm-hmm. and I've done a lot of TV at home, and it's just such a great opportunity to be able to do it in the States, and so they would, over pilot seasons and different kind of times of the year that auditions would come through in large quantities, and I would. From a fairly geeky way myself, set up at home a big blue screen and an HD camera and some lights. I would get friends over, different actors that I knew, and they would read opposite me, and I'd just send these tapes across. If I couldn't be in Los Angeles for small periods of time auditioning for things, and just kept kind of chipping away in that regard. So I would be working from home doing different TV jobs or film or whatever, theatre, and then sending these tapes across. And sometimes you feel like they can go out into space, and you don't know if people watch them or not. But my managers are pretty savvy with that, at following up and making sure that the right people have seen them. And, I'd started getting decent feedback on things, and then a couple of times got really close to jobs. At one time I got flown over to sort of test in front of a network for a role, again as a fast-talking lawyer, interestingly enough. And then another time for a sitcom, they tested my tape, which is where you sign your whole deal before you do your final audition.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it just kept the faith alive for me, and so to just keep trying with the States. And pilot season's brutal. I did a pilot season in Los Angeles where you're doing 3 auditions a day, and everyone's under the pump because they need the thing cast yesterday. And in the end, it's always offered to the guy who's done 3 shows, or
right.
So the odds are really stacked against you. You've got to kind of wait for Josh, whoever. You got to wait for like famous actor 4 to say no. Then they're desperate, and then they're having another session where they're seeing another 20 guys, and then you've got to impress them on top of those 20 guys, and then you've got to hope that they'll like you as an Australian, you don't have your work papers, and that they'll help you get over the line. There's so much stacked against you. But the feedback and the times I've come close, it really kind of just kind of kept me like, okay, no, it is possible. And you do hear everyone takes, Simon Baker Denny or Simon Baker, they call him now, took 7 years to get a gig in the States, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So it just takes time. And getting back to the accent, most of my practice came from just making these tapes and watching myself back. And then my manager would say, it's not been, Ryan, it's been. Or, different little adjustments. It's not zebra, it's zebra. So those sort of things help me kind of develop my own American accent.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that, though, in terms of watching yourself, because a lot of actors are not keen on watching themselves.
Right.
So how does that work for you, then? Is it just something that you do it because you have to improve, obviously, and yes, you need to work, and improve yourself as an actor, but at the same time, do you also then get focused on, maybe you pick something up and had a prop in your hand when you should be focusing on how your accent sounds? I mean, do you do stuff like that, or are you very self-deprecating, I guess, in that regard?
Sorry, what was that second part about the props?
Oh, well, I've heard some actors say before they don't like watching themselves because they made a wrong choice, I guess is what I'm saying as an actor.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So
it's hard, man. It's really hard. And, but the thing is, when I was sending all these tapes across, is that I'd have to kind of watch the takes back and go, oh, which one do I want to send? And so, because you want the best, that's the good thing about taping is that, or taping, as you guys say, is that you have to review your work and figure out, which ones you want them to watch at the other end. And so I got a little bit, but then at the same time, you don't want to get too aware of what you're doing in the scene. You don't want to start thinking, oh, if I do it like this, it works, because then you kind of get a bit self-conscious and, but you do have to watch back basically what you've done. Right. And pick something. And so it gets easier each time. But getting to set and finally getting a job in the States, which was, fairly legal, and getting completely, I always assumed my first job would be, okay, you've got, you're playing Law Clerk 4, and you'll have a couple of scenes each episode, and, or maybe cop that gets shot 5 on CSI for one episode, who knows? But this was like, no, you've just been thrown right in the deep end, you're playing the new love interest, and he's in a lot of scenes and he talks, not just a bit, he says everything. So that was a real challenge at the start, because we can shoot 15 hours a day, and there's a lot of stuff said in a scene, and it's legal talk, and there's jokes, and
Well, also TV moves very fast. It's not like film where you can do like one scene over a week. You guys are shooting constant scene changes. So it's a very fast-paced environment for those who don't know a lot about TV production. So
that's right. And I thought, the American pace, surely it's a little bit more luxurious than it is at home. And it is. You shoot a little bit less in a day, but we're shooting quite a fair bit of stuff. Like, so yeah, like we might shoot 4 or 5 scenes a day, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Right.
And so when you're in every scene, you get to a point in the day where you're like, when the American accent's a real different placement.
Mm-hmm.
Like my voice is quite in the front of my mouth, and I'm a bit nasal, whereas the American accent, you got to kind of put in the back of your throat and relax.
Wow.
You got to kind of drop it back. And so, after a while, after a whole day of talking like this, all of a sudden I'd really start to feel this like my throat would start to hurt and the back of my mouth would start to hurt. And that's when it had become a real challenge. And so it took me it was like going to the gym, it took me at least a month or maybe 6 weeks of just staying in the American accent to really let my kind of throat and larynx know it was okay to stay there all day. And so even watching back the early episodes now, and I'm shooting the 13th episode today.
Oh, wow. Is that the season finale?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah, so we've got 6 days left of shooting.
Oh, wow.
But even watching, from 6 sort of onwards, Ben's voice finally arrived. And so, I had 2 days to get ready for this character, and I've just, the first couple of episodes, I watch back now, and there's this real evolution of Ben, but it kind of works with the plot because he turns up like the bull in the china shop, but he slowly works his way into the firm, and he slowly grounds himself, and he slowly learns things from Kate, and he evolves as the season goes on anyway. So I can, I've rationalized that I can kind of get away with it, but the voice definitely evolves as the show goes along.
Well, you said something which I found very cool. Is you said that you're a little geeky yourself, and I knew you starred in Ghost Rider as.
I starred, as the role of waiter.
Okay, that's a general term used. As the waiter. And that had to be least exciting because were you a fan of the comic book of Ghost Rider or at all? Or
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not. I'm a geek in the form of like I like computer games and I like
nice.
I'm into kind of Mac products and social media.
Oh, so you're a techno geek.
Yeah, a little bit more. I'm a little bit more in that field. My brother's got like a PhD that's tied up with computer games, and so I've always kind of been a geek by association.
Oh.
Yeah, and so, but as far as the comic books are concerned, that's kind of Baron who plays Leo on our show.
Uh-huh.
He's always kind of bringing in these graphic novels, and he's trying to get me to be a comic book fan by association, and he's just given me my first one called Incognito.
I've heard of that, but I've not read it.
Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, and it's quite interesting, but I wish I knew more about the comic world. No,
that's fine. Well, I was just pondering that because some people are either, and you said you were a bit geeky, so I was just going to, because that's the great thing about being a geek is that it covers many different spectrums. It covers comic books, movies, television, music, video games, computers, technology. So
absolutely.
But I will say this in terms of graphic novels, if you ever get a chance, Kick-Ass is pretty good.
Kick-Ass, I love the movie.
Honestly, the movie is, I hate, usually it's the other way around. The movie's actually a little bit better than the comic book, but it's nice to see where the comic book, I know, right? It's nice to see the graphic novel, and there's a book called The Waiting Place by Sean McKeever. I hope I said his name right. It's like a small town, winter town kind of thing. It's just people dealing with their life stuff, and it's really good too. Not normal comic book fodder, it sounds like, but it's actually very, very good.
Okay, I'll have to tell Baron about both of those things because
you can
I actually tweeted a picture of Baron the other day. He was sitting there reading a graphic novel, and I just said the comic reads comics because he's an incredible stand-up comedian and fan of comic books. So
I didn't know.
Yeah, he's trying to lure me into that world.
Well, I got to tell you, if you get the right books, man, it's not that difficult. But the thing is, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can get sort of, caught up in that might not be the best book. You got to find the best book that works for you. And again, if it does work for you, if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. Some of them.
Yeah, sure.
But you're a techno geek. What is your favorite, I guess, video game? Do you play like computer games, like on the Mac, or do you play on like Xbox, Wii?
For me, it's all about Drake. Uncharted, I think, is probably the coolest computer game I've ever played.
Wow, awesome! Yeah, because I have a PlayStation 3, but I've not gotten a chance to play it. I know that makes me sound very. I don't know the PlayStation.
You haven't played Uncharted?
I know, right? I haven't played Uncharted. I've played. I've been to my friend's house who has a PS3, and I've played Infamous, but I've not played Uncharted, and I feel like a very bad video game aficionado, but I've not. I feel very horrible.
Yeah, well, Uncharted, the thing that I really like about Uncharted is the acting. Like, the performance that they... when you unlock certain levels, it unlocks, like, extras where you can watch the way that they shot different scenes, and
oh wow,
it's really interesting to watch because it's all motion capture where people, they put the balls all over them, and then basically it's just like an open space, studio space, and then they get the three different actors in and they kind of act out all the scenes and capture it, and then put it together later on. But it's just the way that they explore character in Uncharted that I think is really good. And then in the third one, they go right back to his innate childhood and, how the two kind of leads met up and...
almost like Indiana Jones in a way, because that's the third one.
It is.
That
it
one.
really is.
That's awesome.
It is a bit like that. But then there's something about that kind of level of gameplay where you feel so connected to these characters that when you're in the moment playing it, it just adds to the overall experience. And I think that's kind of what's cool about where computer games are going is that it's, and that things like that technology that Peter Jackson's developing with all of his films that are kind of now crossing over into the computer game world where it's just getting realer and realer. So the reactions are getting realer and the kind of the way that the characters respond to different situations, and it just makes the overall experience, that much cooler. And then my brother's got the whole 3D setup.
Oh wow!
And so I'll go to his place and we'll put on goggles and play Avatar or something, and goggles, glasses, but we play Avatar, and it's just so cool having seeing someone holding a gun, but the elbow's sticking out of the screen at you.
Yeah, that's
just awesome.
Well, what is the best 3D transfer you've seen at your brother's setup then? Would it be
you mean as far as games go, that I've seen?
In terms of video games or even films, even too?
I haven't watched a lot of film in 3D. I'm just not that into film in 3D. I'm still not sold. I think Avatar did it really well, and I think Puss in Boots did it brilliantly. I've heard Hugo is one of the best uses of 3D, but
it is pretty.
But
good,
it was it felt like Avatar came out and made more money than most countries have put together, and then the studios went, that works, let's do it, quick. And so they kind of oversaturated it, and now people are a bit burnt out, and they're I'm getting headaches, and, I've got to wear the glasses the whole film, and my kid sitting next to me keeps pulling them off, and and it just becomes this thing of like doing it for money's sake as opposed to really making it part of just enriching the story and making the story better and all that sort of thing. But I thought, as far as the games were concerned, I thought Batman Arkham Asylum did 3D really well, and I thought the Avatar game did 3D really well.
Did you like Arkham City, by the way?
You know what? I've got it sitting here, and Baron made me buy it, and I shoot so many hours in a day that I really haven't had enough of a chance to explore it. But from what I've seen, it's pretty cool.
Now, do you tend to lean more towards the Sony PlayStation, or do you have an Xbox 360 and which version do you prefer to go lean towards, I guess?
I've got a 360. I've played a lot of 360. Gears of War is probably, for me, the ultimate 360 experience. I got Gears 3 before I left, and I thought I was just going to be in the States for a month auditioning, and I was going to go home and finish it, so that's waiting for me when I get back.
Very cool.
That's just amazing. I'm so blown away by what they did with that.
Well, especially the story, I think, because the first game was all about, we're killing these big, ugly, nasty creatures, and it was really awesome. Yeah. And then the second one, like a story kicked in that was sort of the first one. And so then you're just like, I want to get to the third one. And so, that's one of those ones where I've just been waiting for it to come down a bit in price, and then so I could lap it up and play the hell out of it, because I love Gears of War 2, and I went back and replayed the first one, and it's all gravy, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and I love the idea of just being able to like shoot a guy half to death and then go up to him and turn on your chainsaw and like rip his head apart. It's so much fun.
Well, hey, I have something else for you. Being a video game aficionado, that you could maybe bust out on Baron, being he's a general comic book fan. There's a webcomic called pennyarcade.com. Or
Penny Arcade.
Yeah, Penny-Arcade. It's a webcomic. It's a comic strip that's done online, and it's for video game fans. And
okay.
Like, have you being that you probably you have an iPhone or an Android, have you ever played Drawing with Friends yet?
No, but Baron's playing it.
Well, okay. Well, see, there you go. And you probably heard of it before Baron even started playing it. Well, they have a comic strip on there where they do jokes like that, where it's like someone mixes the game up a little bit by drawing something else, like covering the whole picture, because it's like win, lose, or draw technically, and the other person has to guess what it is. And then like. So the word is cup. So, but you would draw like a naked man, and he's holding a very tiny, dainty teacup, and you have an arrow pointing to the cup. And that's the.
So it's sort of like Pictionary, online.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And Penny Arcade made the joke that with that is like instead of actually drawing the item, which is an actual cup, they would draw very profane things to distract you from the cup.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
I like that.
Or what's
the
right.
One where you draw boobs next to a banana or something, and it's a banana. You got to say banana, but people, you got to see how far down the path you can take them before they get the word.
Exactly. So if you're ever a fan of video games, it's actually really fun. They've actually did one for Uncharted once, where apparently the AI, I think in the second game, where they just kept there's a fire or something going on, and the AI just kept repeating the same thing or something like that, and it's the only thing they found wrong with the game was just that one scene where Drake, and they just keep repeating. It's like, we're gonna go get you, and it's like apparently the fire could, I don't know, it was something very like and that's the thing, for those who don't play the game, they have a long news post explaining the game and how they found to that point. I mean, it's really funny stuff if you ever get a chance. Penny-arcade.com, yes sir. And Baron would probably get a kick out of it too, because they do cover, like they had one a few weeks ago about Star Wars, and it just doesn't cover video games, but 9 times out of 10 it totally does. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll check it out. The one other game that I really loved and finished quite quickly was a game called Bulletstorm. Did you play that?
No, I've not heard of that before. Bulletstorm?
Yeah, it was kind of it was like on the PS3, and it had a bit of a Gears of War look and feel, but the cool thing was you'd get points for kind of killing people creatively, killing creatively, killing these kind of aliens, and a little bit like you were talking about Infamous before, like you can you can suck your enemy towards you. It's kind of like this charge that comes out of your wrist, like an electric kind of charge, and you draw them towards you, and then it goes in a slow-mo, and you can do a kick to their head and then shoot them a certain way, and
nice.
That's a real hoot. I loved that game.
I'll have to look into that, man. It's called
Bulletstorm. Yeah, because it kind of went under the radar a little bit.
I'm writing that down right now so I can Bulletstorm. Yeah, I'll have to. Well, I mean, it's going to be this is going to be on the show, but again, Zach, because I'm going to write that down. Yeah, because I like getting new games that especially ones that fly under the radar. Because sometimes those are the real gems. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Real quick before I want to let you go, I saw, because I'm a big indie film fan, and I don't get to all of them all the time, but I know, and also I figured you might want to plug it too, is you're in some films called All My Friends Are Leaving Brisbane, and also a film called Juicy. Which,
yes.
Yeah, which I figure might be available on DVD here in the States. I tried looking on Netflix streaming, and I couldn't find them, but I figure they're actually in Netbox for DVD. And you've been in both films, and they're both by Stephen Vegg and Louise Alston. Can you maybe want to talk a little bit about that? And are you doing anything with them in the future, like when Fairly Legal goes on hiatus here in a bit?
That's very interesting that you say that, because they just sent me their next script. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with Stephen on a couple of shows at home. We did a show called Out of the Blue, and a show called a kind of really long-running soap at home called Home and Away, which a lot of actors come from, like Chris Hemsworth is Thor, and
I think Yvonne Stravinsky came from that too, didn't she?
I think she did. She might have done some Home and Away as well. She definitely did a show called Headland, which was kind of an offshoot of Home and Away. Okay. But Stephen's a TV writer, and he is a theatre writer, and he wrote a really cool film called All My Friends Are Leaving Brisbane. And
Brisbane, sorry, not Brisbane. My apologies.
Brisbane. No, that's all right. And it's basically about people it's about lawyers again. And just it's that feeling in your town where you're always kind of bummed out about the town you live in. You always think there's a better option. You always think that, if I could just do that, if I could get to London, it's such a big, great city. Brisbane's not enough for me. And it's that theme of, like, some people just need to get out to realize how good it is where they are, and embrace their roots and embrace where they're from. And so you get to London, and it's just more subways, and it's more public transport to get from A to B, and it's more, the beers are more expensive, and at the end of the day, you're still sitting in a bar, and you're still sitting around with a bunch of Aussies, and you're still sitting around, bitching about when you can take your next holiday. And so it's a really fun little film, and it kind of resonates across the board, and it's done well at different film festivals.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. I was very surprised because I usually hear of films from Australia and other countries on the indie circuit because of the film festival thing. And like I remember hearing a little bit about All My Friends Are Leaving Brisbane, but I didn't hear it. It was one of those things I heard about once or twice, and then when I looked up, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen the trailer for this. This looks, and so I've been trying to get my hands on it so I can watch it because it looks fantastic, and Juicy looks really good too.
Juicy's. Again, it's set in Brisbane, and this is a kind of Brisbane's where I went to university. It's in Queensland. It's a really beautiful city, and it's got a great kind of independent theatre scene, and it really embraces the art, and so Stephen the writer comes from this world of independent theatre, and it pokes fun. This film kind of pokes fun at the small world of independent art, and just how cliquey it is, and how self-important it is, and how swept up everyone gets in their own kind of little world, be it a cooperative theatre in the outskirts of Brisbane, or a major theatre company in New York. At the end of the day, it all becomes the same nonsense, and it becomes all the same kind of hierarchy and the same kind of bullshit, basically. and so it's Romy and Michelle's high school reunion set in the Independence Theatre scene in Brisbane, and these two girls make a pact with each other. One of them's going to have a job, and one of them's going to have a boyfriend by the end of the film. And I play this narcissistic, self-important douchebag called Alex, who just has he has an addiction of the week. So 1 minute he's got a gambling problem, next minute it's sex addiction, next minute it's drugs.
Oh, wow.
And it's just that kind of, it's just middle class kind of self-loathing that he doesn't really have any real problems. So he's trying to construct drama in his life so that he's a more interesting and edgy actor.
Well, there are more people out there who are like that, who, their life is actually okay. They create drama for themselves, so they feel like they're important only because. That's very relatable, man.
Yeah, it is, and you meet these people, and it's like, dude, life's good, embrace it, But they're like, oh no, I've got to find problems in every situation. Then I'll feel more interesting as a human being. And so that's definitely what this guy is. And he becomes the kind of anti-love interest for the lead actress because she thinks, he's the guy she thinks she wants to be with. But in reality, there's always that better option. So yeah, it's a really fun little film, and they're really kind of. I think they make films that are quite specific to an area, but they resonate to everyone because of the themes that they put in their films. And so their next one's called Friday Night Drinks, which looks like it should be a real hoot too. So yeah, they're a really cool team, and they're doing some really good stuff.
Now, is that going to be because I was trying to research on it, at least Juicy, because I've heard of friends leaving, but I didn't hear much about Juicy at first. I read up saying that it's part of like a how do I want to say this? How did the reporter word it? They said something like it's part of a trilogy, a Brisbane trilogy, or something like that. Is this like the third part? Friday Night Drinks, is that the third part in this?
Friday
trilogy?
Night Drinks is going to be the third part. Yeah,
very nice.
And they're currently trying to get that up. And God love these guys. I mean, you go from doing these jobs where you paid quite well and put up in hotels and driven around to. All right, Ryan, you got to get yourself to Brisbane. You can stay on Stephen's couch, and there'll be lunch provided on set, and a packet of Doritos, and and you often kind of catch yourself at 4 a.m. standing around some city street where you haven't got clearance to be shooting, and there's some poor film student being exploited to hold the boom, and some up and coming cinematographer. And you know what? I'll be standing there doing that stuff with them, thinking this is just as awesome as any other job because it everyone kind of really wants to be here, and it's just fun, and that's what I think comes across in the films that they've made, and I think that's why they've kind of they've done well in festivals around the world because they kind of sum up what filmmaking's all about. And also modern day film, the digital realm where it's just easier to get out there and do it.
Oh yeah. Now did they shoot those two films in actual film or celluloid, or did they use digital cameras for that?
All my friends were shot on 16mm.
Okay.
And that was kind of the last thing I think I ever did on film.
Oh, wow.
Now everything is digital. Even Fairly Legal we shoot on HD on these tiny little red cameras, and it's we'll shoot scenes on 5D or a 7D, the Canon SLR cameras. We'll shoot we shoot with red cameras, which are proper kind of film cameras that are they don't use film, but they're used for film. That makes sense. But like the 7Ds and the 5Ds look like your dad's old Nikon camera, Oh, wow. And so they'll have a third camera on the roof looking down at us. And it's just this tiny little SLR thing. And, the amazing thing about the digital kind of era is what used to be an experience on set of, you got 8 guys huddled around this beast of a camera, and every 5 minutes they've got to reload and check the gate, and put another, reel in or whatever it is that pumps the 35 or 16 mil film through.
Mm-hmm.
These days, you walk on set and there's 8 guys huddled around this tiny little box that they're trying their best to add all these lenses onto to give it some kind of presence on set,
Yeah.
But the first few times I had it, it's a really weird feeling because it's just this tiny little thing now that stares at you. Yet with 1080p, you can blow that up to, nearly an IMAX screen without it pixelating. So it's just making filmmaking so much more accessible to so many different people, and that's why the second film, Juicy, they got up and just shot on digital, and I think it looks as good, if not better, with what they did in post.
Well, do you when you do Fairly Legal? I mean, especially then with a bigger, but even it's bigger or smaller. But does it help you with a bigger budget show like Fairly Legal compared to Juicy or All My Friends? With that smaller camera, you said it was weird at first, but is it also a little more accessible because usually because I remember when I see making up specials and everything, the cameras used to be this big hulking thing, unless it's on a crane or something, which makes it even more hulking and huge. So it could be very distracting as an actor trying to, trying to look past the camera at your eye line at something on the screen. Being with smaller, does it actually help you a little bit more as an actor?
I think maybe 12 years ago when I started out, I found that the presence intimidating, but after a while it becomes what you work towards.
Nature.
So, and you've got to find your camera and you've got to make it your friend. So it doesn't necessarily make much of a difference. And on Fairly Legal, they have these reds, and the lenses are so big, and the shells that they put around them, like in the matte box and all that, it ends up looking like the front of the camera looks like a normal camera, and then it just slowly gets smaller and thinner. But it still has quite a presence on set, and so it's not that different when you're working on something like a big American TV show.
Well, if Fairly Legal gets picked up for season 3, because you seem to maybe it's just me misreading a little bit, but you seem to really understand a lot about the filmmaking process or just shooting. Do you want to maybe direct and maybe direct an episode of Fairly Legal, or is that something you want to work towards? Or
I think at this stage, being on my first American TV show and the mountain that I feel like it's been to get through 13 episodes.
Taking it easy a little bit.
I think I'd be kind of getting a bit big for my boots if I went to Peter Rocco and said, all right, next season I want to direct. That's not in the kind of near distant future. I'd love to one day, go down the directing path, but at this stage, I'm pretty happy in front of the camera. I'm having a good time there, and the character's so much fun, and there's so much homework to do, just learning all the lines and, getting over getting through the kind of emotional arc and all that sort of thing, that at this stage, I'm happy where I am. But one day I'd love to have a to go down that.
Well, I think you sound very well knowledgeable, and so I think you, at least in my opinion, you sound like you're ready.
Well, actually, I made a web series last year.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, that I wrote with a friend. Speaking of the digital world, it's called One Step Closer to Home. Okay. And One Step Closer to Home.tv is the website. So, my friend directed that, and we started it together, and we had a very small team. But that was a fun experiment in kind of do-it-yourself filmmaking.
Definitely.
And could not be more polar opposite to something like Fairly Legal. So that's worth a look.
Well, I'll put that on the website. I'll definitely put that on the website, and I'll check it out myself too. And I'll also try to check out Bulletstorm. I'm actually very intrigued about Bulletstorm because that sounds.
Yeah, check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Well,
a lot of fun.
Ryan, they said around 11:15, for me it's 1:15, but for you it's 9:15. You're about ready to probably be on set due, so I don't want to take any more of your time because again I want to thank you so much for doing this doing the show. And remember, everyone out there, you can catch Ryan as Ben Grogan on Fairly Legal, which begins at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on USA Network. Check your local listings for the channel.
Thanks, mate.
Get out of here without cheese! You're a creep! Go away! We're having a good time until you start up, cheapers! Go have some coffee with cream or something! Because I'll tell you something! This is a happy place!
What the fuck am I supposed to say? What song is that?